Total War Warhammer 3 has recently released, but today we're taking a look at a different Total War. It's 2022, Shogun 2 has been out for 10 years, and what better time to go back to the past and have a look at how they can hold up compared to the more modern games, and see if Shogun 2 is worth it in 2022. Veterans of the series will remember all the way back in 2000, the first ever Total War was indeed Shogun Total War, starting a game series that would take us throughout all the time periods of history and now even fantasy. A beloved game of many, arguably one of the better Total Wars at the time, releasing after two games that were quite contested on our opinions, and I am of course talking about Empire Total War, and of course Napoleon Total War. Empire Total War was released in quite a buggy state, and Napoleon had an AI that was not one of the best in the series. So coming back to Japan was Creative Assembly's choice, and as a massive fan of the Sengoku period, I was very happy to hear this. Unlike the previous installments of Empire and Napoleon, which are set in a period where guns were very dominant, Shogun 2 takes us back to 500 years or so to the time of the samurai, the Sengoku Jidai or the Warring States period. Warlords and clans are vying for power, new religions are merging, and Europeans have arrived in Japan bringing new weapons and technology. You take control of one of these warring clans on its path to become Shogun of all Japan. In Shogun 2, you have a choice of 9 clans as well as 3 more clans from their respective DLCs. One criticism that many give them is that they are all very similar, which is not incorrect. They all use the same units and buildings, they have the same mechanics, and they aren't that much different to each other. The thing that sets them apart are the starting positions, the few unique units that the clans have, and the buffs that the clans give. The buffs and the unique units all promote a certain playstyle for each of the clans, and the start positions make each campaign feel different. I'm not going to go through them all, of course, but I am going to talk about my favourite clan, and that is the Odor. Odor's faction bonuses are all benefiting of the Yari Ashigaru. Their unique unit is the Long Yari Ashigaru, and their playstyle fits mine. Lots of cheap peasant units ready to throw at my enemy and easily replace when they are dead. Odor starts in the centre of Japan, so it's not the easiest beginner-friendly start position, but it does allow you to expand in whatever direction you want, and honestly, I do still think this is one of the easiest campaigns, because you have cheaper peasant units and better peasant units. So honestly, if you're new to the game, haven't played it, then definitely go check out the Odor. Another faction that is quite beginner friendly is the Shimazu. The Shimazu starts at the southern tip of Japan. With only one real path to expansion, you can focus your entire attention on one front, only worrying about possible naval invasions, which you can of course defend with your own navy. They have increased loyalty to their generals, making it harder for them to rebel, and overall has superior katana samurai. With these buffs, it allows the player to not worry about the loyalty of your generals, and of course get better overall samurai. Samurai take longer to recruit, but generally will do a lot better than the standard Ashigaru on the best day. The Shogun 2 campaign map is one of my all-time favourites. Spanning across the entirety of Japan, capturing that Japanese feel. It offers an aesthetic that you just don't see in any other Total War. As you go about your expansion through the map, you'll come across a mix of cherry blossoms, lakes and mountains. Not only that, but you can also see your traders and farmers walk around the map trying to get from location to location. Flocks of birds going around the map and even leaves falling off the trees. It can really help bring the map to life. If you've yet to discover a location, you'll be met with a beautiful artistic visualization of the map, which you can also use to find out what unique buildings that are in the provinces. The few downsides of the map are that there isn't much difference whether you're south or north of the map. It looks generally all the same, and the mountains can get repetitive, and the cities offer little to the map apart from being small dots on the map that don't really show much sprawl as you upgrade them over time. That being said, these few negatives won't really lessen your enjoyment of the game. Speaking of cities, the Shogun 2 cities are some of the most customizable cities in the franchise. There are no minor settlements, however each province has its own set of buildings. By default they have farms and roads, and some cities have a port and a unique resource building that typically provides you with a bonus to a select unit and trade resource. With all cities in the game having equal building slots, you don't need to worry about building specific buildings in specific provinces, as each city can upgrade everything to the max. One thing to note, however, is Shogun 2 uses food, which works similar to how population works in future Total Wars, but with a bit more flavour. The food is used for upgrading your main town building, as well as certain buildings like the Rice Exchange being something for money, Having a positive food counter will provide you with a growth bonus. However, going below 0 will start to impact your public order in your provinces. Having low public order can be overall easy to manage. A city can be in red public order for about 1 turn before rebellions happen, so turning down tax for 1 turn to make the public order rise can negate the overall pain of having to worry about rebellions. This can also be used to gain maximum tax income for 1 turn. In this regard, Shogun 2 is one of the easiest to effectively cheese the economy. Overall, I do think older Total Wars like Shogun 2 have a better city management than modern games like Warhammer. Warhammer, I spend a lot of time building the exact same buildings everywhere, and the only reason why I build a building is really due to not wanting to waste a major city slot on a building that only goes to tier 3. Diplomacy in Shogun 2 is probably the hardest in the entire series. The AI is incredibly ruthless in how they deal with the player, so much so that the AI can feel like it is effectively targeting the player. This in turn can spiral into a dogpile of AI declaring war on you, as the AI rates how weak you are via how many wars you are in. This certainly can be off-putting for people, as it can force you to not expand, or rather actively try not to discover more of the map at the risk of discovering more clans. That's not to say diplomacy is completely useless. The AI is quite gullible to trade agreements. Selling military access for a couple of turns can easily net you a few hundred or even thousands of coin. It doesn't have the tuning of the newer diplomacy, nor does it have the big impact in Shogun 2, and due to late game mechanics like Realm Divided, you really don't use the diplomacy for more than just cheesing the AI out of coin. But overall, I still feel like I use the diplomacy in Shogun 2 more than I do in this, let's say, Warhammer 2. Warhammer 2, I spend a lot of time ignoring diplomacy because the AI just won't accept anything anyway, and alliances are worthless in Warhammer, so the only thing I generally would do is trade agreements. So diplomacy as a whole hasn't much changed over the years, other than up until we got the release of Three Kingdoms, which of course did a big overhaul to how it works. Like in modern Total Wars, Shogun 2 technology hasn't diverted from the formula, having the standard unit buffs with each tech, some techs including unlocking select buildings and units. As you expect, this does mean that stuff is locked to the player until the specific technology is unlocked, meaning you can't directly go for everything you want until you've gone through the tech. There are 2 tech trees to go down, the Bushido and the Way of the Chi. Both trees lean into their respective focuses. As you may expect, Bushido aims to provide you with all your military buildings and units, whereas Chi leans towards your monetary and administration buildings and bonuses. The problem with Warhammer was that you'd be kind of hamstrung into grabbing tech you didn't want to due to needing a set amount, and a lot of tech wasn't that great. The factions may all have more uniqueness in how they express their tech, but at its core they are the same with very little appealing bonuses. In Shogun 2, it's the opposite. All factions have the exact technology, but I've always felt they were more appealing to research, while not feeling forced to get technology I didn't want just to get to later technologies. The first thing you'll probably notice when entering a battle is the lack of quality of life features that you may be used to in more modern Total Wars. There are no automatic formations when trying to set up your army in deployment, nor can you rotate your entire army with one click of a button. As well as that, you can't even order your men to go in a certain path. You want to drag and drop your units in a formation? You can't do that. It can be quite frustrating coming back to a game that does not have these features. Other than the lack of quality of life features, the game, as mentioned, doesn't boast a ton of different units, so the battles can be quite repetitive due to fighting with and against the same units. But due to the more balanced matchups, they can still be quite enjoyable. A major flaw on any game that has a ton of different units is that lots of the units are useless that you don't use, because the developers spend more time making tons of new units instead of balancing the ones that are in the game. Like many Total War games, range has been a superior unit type over melee throughout most of the games. This is also true in Shogun 2. Due to the lack of shields, most infantry in the game will suffer while fighting against mass amount of bowmen, so you do need to think about how you deal with an enemy that have superior range, especially on the sieges. Unlike the other games, however, though, the cavalry is not as strong as you expect. With the standard Ashigaru being the Yari Ashigaru, cavalry have to really think about when and whom they charge. It's not healthy to be charged directly into a Yari spearwall, and there's a lot of them. But if you do get a rear charge, inner, or charge a non-Yari unit, then cavalry can be devastating. This strikes a nice balance of strong cavalry, but not completely overpowered. A lot of Total Wars do struggle to find this balance. One part of the game that I have always had mixed feelings on are the sieges. Sticking to the fort format they adopted in the previous titles, Shogun 2 has you defend tiered forts. The higher the tier, the more levels the fort has. The issue with this is most of the siege maps are very much the same thing, very little variety. Another thing that can be quite a mixed thing is how your units become unbreakable while they are in the capture point. Unbreakable has always been overpowered in Total Wars, and positioning your army in top of sieges results in your men never breaking and the enemy having to kill the entire unit to win or capture the point. This does allow for some great defences where you're outnumbered, however it can be a massive annoyance when you are the attacker. The one thing about the sieges I have always enjoyed is when I have gunners. This is predominantly in Fall of the Samurai, however certain factions like the Otomo start the game with access to gunpowder units. Having your gunners positioned on the walls as the enemy charge them to climb, watching them get shot down is quite an enjoyable experience. It works similarly to archers as well. And as we established earlier, ranged units are vastly superior in this game due to no units having shields to deflect the shots. Overall, sieges were incredibly fun when defending, however they were not very enjoyable when being the attacker. Navy has at this point in Total War's time had become a mainstay ever since they introduced it back in Empire. Ever since its inception, it's been garnered quite a few debates on whether they are good or not. Naval battles added a fresh way to play the game, however it has always struggled with bugs and slow battles, things that don't necessarily make for good gameplay. After 2 games with Naval Combat, it feels like Creative Assembly at least learned from the previous games and it's a lot less buggy than previous iterations. The slowness of the combat doesn't suffer even more so from bugs, and because the boats are generally manned by Ashigaru with bows, you spend less time trying to position your ships correctly and more time actually fighting. The issue in Napoleon Empire is you had to be fighting broadside to broadside, so positioning was key. Now there is a lot less tactical positioning in Shogun battles, at least in the base game, but it does add to more, just overall less slow battles. Another new feature introduced in Shogun 2 was Realm Divided. Realm Divided is when you've grown big enough or taken Kyoto, threatening the Shogun enough for him to essentially declare you an enemy of the state. Every daimyo, including your allies, will look to war with you even more so. They will generally declare war on you instantly and not accept any diplomacy, something that makes the late game one of, if not the hardest in any Total War games. Realm Divided is something I personally never liked too much as it felt quite forced, however it does stop you from steamrolling too quickly and adds an interesting dynamic near the end of the campaign. It's honestly preference. Do you like a challenge in late game? Do you like having everyone declare war on you? Not everyone does, but maybe you enjoy it yourself. So that's all you need to know about Shogun 2. Do I think it's worth playing in 2022? Yes I do. Old Total Wars have features that you don't get to see in the new ones, so I personally think that it's worth trying it out just for those small features that are no longer in the game. If you did enjoy this video, do be sure to give it a like, and if you're new then consider subscribing. It all helps the channel out a lot, and I do plan on making more videos like this, so tell me in the comment section what Total War or even mod you'd like to see in the next video. But other than that, I shall see you again next time, so have a good one, bye bye.